So I'd like to invite our next speaker now, who's Professor Joan Marsh. Now, I've got the honour of knowing Joan for many, many years. And so I could tell you a lot about Joan, but I will restrict myself, and I'm sure Joan will be very happy that I will restrict myself to her official history. So Joan is the deputy editor of Lancet Psychiatry. She's been a managing editor at the Lancet since 2013, and during that time and previous, she's been very active with the European Association of Science Editors, and indeed was our president for many years. Joan has a wealth of knowledge and information and informed opinions, I would say, about publishing, and has a huge knowledge of what is happening. And she's been very instrumental within EASE about trying to encourage editors to think more broadly about their responsibilities, particularly in the sphere of gender representation, and making sure that we are encouraging diversity through the scholarly communications that editors and publishers are responsible for. And in this talk, she's going to present about the Environmental Manifesto, which EASE presented at our conference back in June. So at this point, Joan, if I'd like to hand over to you, please, to give us some more information about this manifesto. Thank you. Are you there, Joan? Right, Joan, I can't actually hear you. And in fact, at the moment...
No, there you are. That's it. I'm here.
Brilliant. Over to you.
That's the classic. Turn the video on, not the microphone. Okay, so thank you, Pippa. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation and for joining us here. One correction, I am not a professor. I left academia a long time ago, so it's very kind of you to call me a professor, but that's a step too far. So as Pippa said, I'm going to talk about something quite different from the rest of this session, but something that I think as all editors, it's quite dear to our hearts, which is sustainability in the sense of the planet and the world and climate change, and how we can support sustainability in our editorial work. So as Pippa mentioned, EASE, the European Association of Science Editors, we launched our manifesto at our conference in June, Environmental Sustainability and Scientific Publishing. So most of you will be aware, EASE is an international community of individuals and associations engaged in science, communication and editing, very like AXI. And although we have European in our name, we are now global, and we reach out to organizations and individuals around the world. So the manifesto aims to support EASE members and the wider global community of editors in their efforts to reduce the environmental impact of their activities. Now, much of this is common sense. Much of it you might be doing, we hope you're doing already. But what we're encouraging through this manifesto is to take a more structured approach. So one thing we're saying is that organizations should have a written environmental policy. As with everything in science, if we don't monitor it and count it, we don't know how well we're doing, we don't know our baseline, we don't know if we're improving. So each individual initiative, such as actions to reduce single-use plastic, schemes to enable workers working from home, obviously very current now, should be monitored and the effectiveness evaluated. So have a policy, have a written policy, and then monitor how it's being adopted and is it being effective. So you should review the policy regularly with the goal of gradually improving environmental performance. And then communicate your results, share your results with your readers, with other editorial organizations or with scientific organizations, so that we can all build on best practice. So EASE is a signatory to the UN Sustainable Development Goals Publishers Compact, which is a voluntary initiative, and it's based on a 10-step process to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And there's the URL. So I'm going to go through various simple things. Go digital. Does your journal still have a print edition? If so, is it really necessary? I work for the Lancet Psychiatry. We do still print a few copies, but only very few. And I think we will be examining soon if those are really necessary. We used to send them to conferences, but I don't think we're doing that anymore. But we do have a few print subscriptions. If you're printing copies for marketing purposes, can you replace these by social media campaigns? And I think that's the way we're going. If you do print, use recycled paper or paper marked FSC, which is the Forest Stewardship Council. So they're planting trees to replace the trees that are used in paper manufacture. Something we don't necessarily think about is down the line. So we might think, okay, we publish online, we make it available as HTML and as PDFs, and we're digital, we're fine. But many readers still print PDFs. So even if you're not using paper, your readers are. So one thing to think about is minimizing borders, minimizing white space, and just thinking about your PDF design. Is that as efficient as possible, bearing in mind that people will print it? Print journal distribution. If you do have a print journal, avoid plastic wrappers and carrier sheets. Paper wrappers are readily recyclable. They're heavier, but they can be used. Potato starch wrappers, many of you might have magazines now arriving in these. They're biodegradable, so you can put them in your compost and your recyclable waste. But growing the materials to produce these wrappers can compete with the cultivation of staple foods and should therefore not be used in large scale. So again, thinking through beyond just the initial step of, okay, my wrapper's biodegradable or recyclable, but where's it coming from? And can you distribute your journal naked? Can you somehow just have a fairly plain front cover so that you can print address details directly on the journal? And talk to your printer. Printers now are very au fait with these ideas, and they'll have the best idea for you. So it's worth a discussion. Then we come to office management. So I'm actually assuming here that we're working in offices. I haven't been in our Lancet office since March 2020, and I won't be going back until January 2022. But these are some things either for your commercial office or for your home office. So one thing is thinking about an environmentally aware search engine provider. We all spend a lot of time searching. Search engines use resources, they're using electricity. So actually switching to something like Ecosia can help with your environmental footprint. Appliances such as printers, computers, scanners use energy efficient devices, which can be repaired, long-lasting software support, and turn them off at night. Recycle printer cartridges, batteries, redundant computer equipment, and office supplier outlets might help with this. If you're in a multi-person office and you think there's a lot of printing going on, consider restricting printing allocation. We've actually were monitoring this in the office over the 2 years before COVID locked us down, and the print use was going down massively. Make recycling easy by providing plenty of bins, clearly labeled, regularly emptied. But also bear in mind, reducing and reusing is always preferable to recycling. So again, in the office, consider lighting, LED bulbs, lights that turn off when no one is in the room, not lighting buildings at night. I think we're getting better as a globe at that, but there's still very bright cities at night. Encourage staff to turn off equipment before leaving the office. Use teleconferences. Again, we started to do this before the pandemic. Now, almost all meetings, I think, are teleconferences. Within the office, food and drink. So use and encourage the use of tap water by installing water fountains if necessary. If people really don't want to drink tap water, then provide large collective water coolers rather than lots of small bottles. Encourage staff to bring their own reusable cups. Encourage the use of washable crockery and cutlery rather than single-use paper or plastic, and provide washing up and storage facilities. One big thing is food miles. So source, if you can, locally produced and seasonal food. So this might be if you are in the office and you're providing lunch during a meeting, or if you're organizing a conference, these things can add up. Purchase predominantly plant-based food, and if you wish to offer choice, make the higher impact foods, which are basically meat and dairy products, opt in rather than opt out. And then think about what happens to leftover food, because there's an awful lot of waste when we're providing food to a group of people, and much of it won't be eaten. So employee management, those of you managing staff or having input to your company, at Elsevier, we have at the Lancet and Elsevier, both of them, Elsevier owns the Lancet, so I work for the Lancet and I work for Elsevier. We have staff councils and we can input suggestions for these type of things. So encourage employees to use public transport, interest-free loans for season tickets or even subsidized season tickets. If people can cycle to work, make that easy, provide cycle racks or safe lock-up facilities, and changing or showering facilities for people who are cycling or even running to work or walking briskly in a hot climate. Looking ahead, e-bikes and e-cars are coming in, so can we provide recharging facilities for those? Encourage car sharing, which I think is better than even lots of individual e-cars driving around. Consider flexible working hours and home working. Again, the pandemic's brought this on. Flexible working hours, people can travel at a time that suits them. It's not so busy. You reduce transport congestion, you reduce costs and spread the load. And then air travel has a particularly high carbon footprint. So encourage employees to travel by train where possible, if that's within a country, and think about making such policies mandatory. I'm based in the UK, and I really don't think we need to be flying from London to Manchester. I think we should be on the train. That's personal, but I would really consider making within country, for small countries with good public transport, really thinking no work air travel for short distances. Then things more specific to editors in our role as gatekeepers of scientific content. So editors have a strong influence on the public discussion of science, and we're in a privileged position that allows us to advocate for high ethical and environmental standards in research and reporting. So we should actively advocate for and implement strategies to promote environmentally sustainable behavior and research in our respective fields. So this is speaking up through our journals, at conferences, societies in our own disciplines, all those types of things, and even in the media, you know, we have a voice. Then invite articles that deal with the consequences of environmental change within your discipline. So I work in health and in psychiatry, but the Lancet now has a journal of planetary health, and it's looking at the consequences of environmental change on people's health. So we have a whole journal looking at this within our journal family. Publishing special themed issues that tackle aspects of sustainability, so really focusing your field on what might be done, and challenge authors and researchers to consider the environmental implications of their workflows and research. So that's it, thank you very much. We have an Environment and Sustainability Committee. So anyone who is passionate about saving the planet through their editorial activities, we would love to hear from you. You don't have to be a member of EASE. So that's the link to our website, and we welcome new members. And if you're interested, you can contact me, or you can contact Pippa, or our secretary, Mary Hodgson. And that's her email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan. That was a great presentation. And there are so many useful and practical tips that you mentioned there, and so many easy things that I think we can do, but we don't always think about. I mean, I've written down turning off the lights. It is one of my particular bugbears is driving through a city late at night and seeing empty offices with all the lights blazing, which always strikes me as a criminal waste. But I think also you made the valuable point about the role of editors and the role of publishers in the scholarly communications area. And I think this is something that perhaps is not as easy as turning the light off, but is a strategic development that really we should be looking at. You know, we have a lot of responsibility over what is published, and therefore, and you know, how our discipline develops. So are there any hints or tips that you would give, or any experience you've got of something that's been done at the Lancet to actually encourage environmentally sustainable research?
Well, there is the Planetary Health Journal. Within that, you've put me on it now.
Oh,
in
sorry.
Psychiatry, not so much. We've had a little bit. The Royal College of Psychiatry in the UK, which is the professional body, they've looked at this and they've published a couple of just comment opinion pieces with us. I mean, I suppose what we're doing in psychiatry is we're really, really focusing on research that benefits the patients. So patient involvement in outcomes, in setting the agenda for research and in being involved in research from the beginning. So not coming in at the end and going, oh yeah, this is a nice paper, this might benefit me, but really saying what research is important. And, you know, in psychiatry, it's a different group of what we call service users, patients, but they need to be more involved, and we're working on that, and there's quite a movement there, but that applies across everywhere. I mean, it's end users. It might be patients, it might be the people who use your technology. You know, going back to Melissa's presentation, her end users are what, production of editors, you know. So I think engaging with people at the end increases efficiency all the way through. And rather than saying, here it is, and commercial companies do this. So commercial companies will do market research and say, am I going to be able to sell my product and for how much? And I think we as editors can think, is this research we're publishing and facilitating going to help anybody? And I think we can really encourage authors to think that through.
And I think you're right, this is an extension of the waste in research movement that started several years ago, but it's actually expanding it into, you know, waste in research and waste of the Earth's resources movement. And I think it's very good. I believe there is going to be a joint editorial published by medical journals in September advocating for that. And is Lancet Psychiatry taking part in that?
Yes, so 11 of the Lancet journals are going to publish it. I don't know how that decision's been made. And then we're going to publish it in European Science Editing as well. It's mainly aimed at health journals, but European Science Editing is talking to the editors of health journals. So I'm hoping that we'll publish it in that journal, and then with a commentary, putting it in context for ease. And it's all meant to come out time in with the UN General Assembly. So it's quite a big coordinated effort to get some PR.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. I think it's fascinating. And I think, as you said, big things and little things we can do. So we can tackle the little things, but don't forget about the big things as well. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Pippa.